Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we are setting out on a real deep dive into the mechanics, the history, and the sheer scale of what is literally the most powerful and wealthy family on Earth, the House of Saud. We're going to trace how a 15th century desert clan navigated centuries of bloody conflict, shifting alliances, and massive geopolitical upheavals to achieve absolute power on the global stage. It is an absolutely fascinating story, and I'm so excited to guide you through it.
All right, let's dive right into this. $1.4 trillion. Seriously, just let that number sink in for a second. This single massive figure represents the estimated net worth of the House of Saud. And to put that into perspective, this kind of wealth doesn't just make them richer than any other royal family alive today. It makes them richer than every king on Earth and arguably the wealthiest family in all of recorded history.
So, how exactly did they achieve this staggering level of wealth and influence? Well, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the trillion-dollar dynasty as it stands today. Second, we'll go back in time to trace the turbulent rise of the Saudi states. Third, we'll look at the forging of modern Saudi Arabia. Fourth, we'll break down their unique architecture of power. And finally, we will look at the opposition and controversy they face today.
Okay, Section 1. The trillion-dollar dynasty, wealth beyond measure. Before we can truly appreciate the historical journey of the House of Saud, we really need to wrap our heads around the sheer, mind-boggling scale of the family's current reality.
You know, when we say the House of Saud, we're talking about a massive royal family estimated to have around 15,000 members. But here's the catch. The vast majority of the real power, the influence, and yes, that $1.4 trillion in wealth is highly concentrated. It sits largely within a core group of just about 2,000 royals. So out of that massive family tree, it's this inner circle that truly holds the keys to the kingdom.
And where exactly does the nearly $1.5 trillion net worth actually come from? Well, it's intrinsically tied to Saudi Aramco, the state oil and gas company, and the nation's absolutely sprawling fossil fuel reserves. Because the family and the state are, for all intents and purposes, one and the same, the market capitalization of these vast natural resources directly feeds the dynasty's totally unprecedented historical wealth.
But here's the thing. They didn't always have oil, and they definitely didn't always have control. That brings us to Section 2, the rise of Saudi states, centuries of conflict. Let's travel back in time to explore the turbulent, often super bloody history that forged this modern empire.
Because their rise to power, it was anything but a straight line. There wasn't just one Saudi state. There were actually three distinct eras of rule. The first Saudi state was founded back in 1727, the second in 1824, and the third, which is the one that survives today, began in 1902. What this really tells us is that the House of Saud lost their grip on the Arabian Peninsula and had to fight tooth and nail to regain it multiple times. Now, a massive catalyst for their early expansion was religion. During that first Saudi state in the 18th century, the founder, Mohammed bin Saud, formed a really crucial alliance with an Islamic scholar named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. Wahhabism, if you're not familiar, is a strict, puritanical Islamic sect, and this alliance provided the Muwahhidun, the monotheists as they called themselves, with the intense religious zeal they needed to fuel their early conquests across the peninsula. But as you might guess, that rapid expansion brought some pretty severe consequences. In 1802, Saudi Wahhabi forces sacked the Shiite holy city of Karbala. They destroyed the Golden Dome above Hussein's tomb and took massive amounts of plunder. Well, this violent peak caught the attention of the Ottoman Empire, and by 1818, Ottoman Egyptian forces fiercely retaliated. They completely razed the Saudi capital of Diriyah, and they actually took the Saudi ruler Abdullah all the way to Constantinople, where he was beheaded. It was a totally devastating end to the first state. Moving forward to Section 3, Forging Modern Arabia, Dawn of the 20th Century. After a really rocky second state, one that was marked by intense family infighting, the modern kingdom that we know today finally begins to take shape.
Honestly, the story of the third state is incredibly cinematic. Picture this. It's 1902, and a young leader named Abdulaziz, commonly known in the West as Ibn Saud, is just 20 years old and living in exile. With literally only a few dozen followers, he captures Riyadh's Mosmek fort in a highly daring raid, taking out the rival governor. From that single fortress, Ibn Saud spent the next 3 decades defeating rival clans like the Al-Rashid, consolidating Central Arabia, and eventually uniting his dominions into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932. So, the absolutely crucial point is what happened next. Just 5 years after the country was unified, we hit the year 1937. American surveyors working near Dammam discovered massive oil reserves. This is, without a doubt, the ultimate turning point in the family's history. Before 1937, many members of the Saudi family were literally destitute. But practically overnight, this discovery laid the groundwork to transform them into absolute billionaires. Talk about a game changer.
With all that immense wealth secured, how exactly does the House of Saud govern? Let's jump to Section 4, Architecture of Power, how the family governs. We're going to analyze the modern mechanics of their political grip.
It becomes pretty clear right away that the Saudi monarchy is not just some ceremonial institution like we see in a lot of Western countries. The family is the state. King Salman sits as the head of state with absolute monarchical power. His son, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, operates as the de facto ruler and prime minister. And those key 2,000 royal family members we talked about earlier, they operate the critical gears of government directly, filling the vital roles of ministers and regional governors across all 13 provinces.
Now, historically, passing down this absolute power actually worked a bit differently than you might expect. Since the death of the founder, Ibn Saud, in 1953, succession went from brother to brother, a system known as agnatic seniority. But King Salman made a massive historical shift. He ended decades of brother-to-brother succession by elevating his son, Mohammed bin Salman, to crown prince. This pivoted the entire kingdom to a direct lineage, father-to-son succession model, fundamentally changing the future power dynamics of the entire family.
And this intense concentration of power builds directly into the everyday operations of the state. Historically, senior princes would hold positions for decades. Take the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of Interior, for instance. Over time, these long-term appointments allowed these princes to intermingle their immense personal wealth with state resources. These departments effectively became their own royal fiefdoms, where they'd even appoint their own sons as deputies. All right, time for our final section. Section 5, Opposition and Controversy, Challenges to Rule. We are going to take a strictly impartial, fact-based look at the challenges to their absolute rule. Because, let's face it, when one family holds all the wealth and power, opposition is pretty much inevitable. The House of Saud has faced diverse domestic and international opposition over the decades. Just to run through a few key events. In 1979, Saudi dissidents violently seized the Grand Mosque in Mecca, leading to a siege that ended with forces storming the sanctuary. In 2016, the government executed prominent Shia cleric Sheikh Nimr, sparking a huge international outcry. In 2017, the predominantly Shia town of Al-Awamiyah was placed under full military siege in response to protests. The following year, the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi drew severe international condemnation. And recently, we've seen the formation of the NAS political party by exiled intellectuals.
And that last point brings us to this really critical quote. Why are groups like the NAS party operating from exile in places like London? Well, because under the basic law of Saudi Arabia, forming a political party is considered sedition, punishable with lengthy jail terms. The constraints on political opposition within the kingdom are absolute. The ruling family simply does not permit institutionalized political rivals. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. We've seen how the House of Saud rose from a desert clan in the 15th century to forge a $1.4 trillion dynasty with absolute monarchical control. But as they face a rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape, a globally connected population, and massive internal generational shifts, the question remains, can absolute power truly adapt to the modern world? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this deep dive has given you a whole new perspective on the history behind the headlines